There is something in you that still believes wealth and spirituality cannot share the same space. That if you become truly prosperous, you will end up losing yourself. That by receiving too much, you risk no longer being who you are. And it is this silent belief, so common, so hidden, that keeps sabotaging everything you try to build. Because on the outside, maybe you're already doing everything. Studying the law of attraction, writing down goals, visualizing, affirming. But on the inside, there is noise, a doubt, a discomfort, as if there were something wrong with wanting a materially broader, lighter, more fluid life. As if seeking abundance were somehow dirty, a little too vain, a little distant from the soul. And here is the point that almost no one talks about. But that might change everything. Your vibration is not determined by what you want, but by what you believe you are allowed to feel. Your energy does not align with what you want. It aligns with what your body can sustain without guilt, without fear, without tension. That's why, even with so much effort, abundance still seems to slip away. Because your inner system, your body, your mind, your energetic field, was programmed to survive, not to expand. It was shaped by beliefs that associate wealth with arrogance, growth with loss, success with loneliness. But what if that weren't true? What if everything you learned about money, about worthiness, about spirituality, had been distorted by generations of emotional scarcity? Science has already proven what many spiritual teachers have always taught. Your beliefs shape your biology. Bruce Lipton shows that it's not your genes that determine your reality. It's your chronic emotions, your unconscious perceptions, your inner repetitions, even those you no longer notice, even those that say, you can't have it all. And Joe Dispenza adds, if your body is still trapped in the past, by financial traumas, memories of lack, the anxiety of control, it will keep sending out incoherent signals. The quantum field responds to coherence, not to effort, not to willpower, not to desperation disguised as faith. That is why, before trying to attract more, you need to learn to sustain more. Because true abundance doesn't just arrive, it blossoms from within. It is born from the release of fear, from the reconciliation between soul and matter, from the deep permission to live lightly without losing your essence. Maybe no one has ever told you this before, but you can be deeply spiritual and deeply prosperous. You can walk with an open heart and with full pockets. You can serve the world and be generously rewarded for it, because wealth is not a sin. It is not a burden. It is not a threat. Wealth is flow. It is presence. It is the expansion of life moving through you and being received with maturity, with gratitude, with awareness. This video is a portal for you to deeply understand why your financial reality still does not match your intention. And more than that, it is a calling for you to begin reprogramming the silent scarcity frequency vibrating at the core of your being. What comes next could change everything if you allow it. Maybe you say you want to prosper, that you desire a financially peaceful life, full of possibilities, autonomy, and choices. But there is something that doesn't show on the surface, a nearly imperceptible tension between what you declare you want and what you deep down fear that wealth might bring with it. Because every achievement, even the most desired, carries an invisible price. For many, prosperity means risking no longer belonging, no longer being accepted by their circle, being judged, criticized, pushed away. And then, without realizing it, fear begins to sabotage the vibration. The body contracts, the field closes, and the energy that should expand retracts. It's as if the unconscious were saying, I want more money, but what if I become someone my family doesn't recognize? What if I'm envied? What if they abandon me because now I'm no longer the same? This internal dissonance weakens the power of desire, because it isn't only what you want that vibrates in the field. It's also what you fear losing once you achieve it. The subconscious records wealth as rupture, a potential threat to emotional security. Financial growth can be read as betrayal of the family system, of the emotional story built on struggle, scarcity, and simplicity as a moral value. And moved by unconscious loyalty, you sabotage yourself, not out of weakness, but out of love, out of fear of being alone. This silent conflict is behind many blocks that the rational mind cannot explain. Because the vibrational field does not respond to what's on the surface. It responds to what is felt most intensely. And often, the fear of rejection vibrates more strongly than the desire for abundance. That's why so many people live as if they were accelerating, with the handbrake pulled. They try to manifest, affirm, pray, study. But deep down, they feel exhausted because they are torn between wanting to move forward and fearing what they will leave behind. Between wanting to receive and feeling guilty for no longer needing the same effort. Between growing and losing the love of those who always stood by them in pain. And here is where a turning point begins. When you identify those inner voices, subtle, camouflaged, contradictory, something starts to release. You realize that self-sabotage is not a lack of worthiness, nor a spiritual failure. It is a system trying to protect you from the pain of exclusion. But that protection comes at a high cost. Allow yourself to observe your most spontaneous thoughts about money, the ones that arise when you imagine a large sum entering your life. What do you feel? Fear that others will find out? Fear of being seen as greedy? Fear of not knowing how to manage it? These thoughts are the body's language, trying to keep everything the same. Because the familiar, even if painful, feels safer than the new. And this is one of the greatest keys. You can only sustain what you believe is emotionally safe. If wealth is still read as a threat to your identity, your bonds, your spirituality, it will be repelled, even if you rationally desire it. True abundance begins when you understand that you no longer need to choose between love and prosperity, between acceptance and expansion, between soul and matter. When you realize you can grow without disconnecting from anyone, because true belonging does not require you to shrink. It only asks that you be whole. There is an almost constant restlessness around money, a silent urgency that never allows complete rest. Even when everything seems to be under control, the mind starts projecting scenarios of loss, unexpected events, imbalance. What if it runs out tomorrow? What if something goes wrong? What if this doesn't last? This anxiety is not just an emotional reflex. It's chemistry, a deeply conditioned neurological response. Over the years, the brain may have learned to feel alive not in peace, but in problems, not in abundance, but in scarcity, because the brain's reward system adjusts to what is most frequently experienced. When you live for years or decades, dealing with financial stress, scarcity, tight budgets, dopamine, the neurotransmitter linked to motivation and pleasure, stops being released by achievement and starts being released by the anticipation of risk, by the drama, by the adrenaline of almost. It's as if the brain were saying, I'm functioning, I'm alert, I'm in control, but only when there's a threat. This cycle is addictive, not because you like it, but because it has become familiar. It activates brain centers that give you the sensation that something is being done, that there is movement, that you are preparing. But in reality, it is circular motion, keeping you spinning around the same point without moving forward. It's like drinking coffee all day to stay awake. You feel energized, but never truly rested, never truly present, and most importantly, never truly available for peace, because peace requires silence. It requires surrender. It requires trust. And for a brain conditioned by scarcity, that feels far too dangerous. When you begin to achieve some financial stability, something inside of you feels strange. You feel guilty for relaxing. You fear the calm is only the waiting room for the storm. And without realizing it, you begin creating small situations of tension, just to return to the familiar chemical state. It's the body begging for the old addiction to problems. But this is not spiritual failure. This is neuroscience. It's the brain functioning the way it was trained to function, and what was learned can be relearned. One of the most powerful ways to recalibrate this chemistry is to replace the obsessive focus on how it will come with the sincere cultivation of what is already present. Real gratitude, not performative, not the kind done to try to attract more, but the kind that truly recognizes the value of now, that celebrates calm even if partial, that honors the simple authentically. This kind of gratitude activates another dopaminergic pathway, one that doesn't depend on tension, one that associates pleasure with peace, that transforms rest into a safe place, not a sign of danger. Because only when peace becomes familiar does abundance find space to settle. Until then, it may even arrive, but it will be interpreted as a threat, as something strange, as something that doesn't suit you. And here lies the hidden key. The problem is not only in not having what you want, but in not recognizing the emotional state of already having as safe. As long as your body vibrates in alert, abundance will feel excessive, incompatible, uncomfortable, like a beautiful outfit that still doesn't fit. But all of this can change, not through effort, but through sensitive practice, through small, conscious acts of true gratitude, through inner gestures that tell your brain, it's okay, I can be at peace, I can be safe, I can receive without fear. It's not always easy to notice, but there is a profound difference between creating a reality and trying to control the universe. Sometimes, the manifestation that once felt like an expression of the soul subtly turns into an attempt to force life to follow a mental script. You believe you are co-creating, but you're only resisting the flow. When desire turns into urgency, obsession, tense necessity, it stops being creative energy, and it becomes the vibration of lack. You can repeat affirmations every day, visualize in detail, focus with discipline, but if all of this is being done with a tight heart, with fear it won't work, with the sense that it has to work, the quantum field does not respond with expansion. It responds with blockage. Because the universe doesn't hear what you say, it feels what you emanate. And when your intention is loaded with anxiety, with hurry, with desperation disguised as faith, it ceases to be intention. It becomes control. And control is always a response to fear. This is the paradox. The more you try to force a manifestation to happen, the further away you push it. Because force creates tension, and tension breaks vibrational coherence. The quantum field, as studies of physics and consciousness show, responds to coherence, to congruence between thought, emotion, and vibration, not to mechanical repetition, not to the intensity of effort, not to blind willpower. True manifestation is born from lightness, from presence, from the inner state of someone who already feels connected to what they desire, even before seeing any external proof. It's like someone returning from a trip and naturally saying, I was there, I saw it, I lived it. There's no effort to prove, no anxiety to convince, only vibrational presence. And this changes everything, because the vibration of it already is far more powerful than the vibration of it has to be. The first state communicates safety, alignment, silent faith. The second, even when disguised as spirituality, communicates scarcity. The scarcity of someone who doesn't believe they are already worthy. The practice is not about repeating intention like a magic formula, but about feeling it as an inner truth, carrying it like one carries a flame, not like one carries a burden. True intention is gentle, yet firm, silent, yet magnetic. It does not beg the universe, it dances with it. And perhaps this is one of the greatest spiritual secrets. Manifesting is not convincing life to give you something. It is tuning yourself to what is already yours in essence, waiting only for a coherent field to materialize. When intention stops being a demand and becomes an expression of your deepest truth, time ceases to be a problem, and the result inevitably blossoms. Because the universe does not respond to force, it responds to frequency. And the most creative frequency is not control. It is confident surrender, silent certainty, the vibration of someone who has already returned from where they went to receive. Nature never rushes anything. It never tries to manifest fruit before its time. It never forces the flow. Everything in it follows a field of silent intelligence, an invisible wisdom that organizes chaos with perfection. What sprouts, sprouts at the exact time. What blooms, blooms, because it found fertile soil, favorable climate, coherent environment. And this is not just poetic, it's physical, it's energetic, it's quantum. The theory of morphogenetic fields, proposed by Rupert Sheldrake and expanded by thinkers like Greg Braden, reveals that there is a field of information that organizes reality, far beyond what our eyes can see. This field responds to patterns, to frequency, to coherence between intention and emotion, between vibration and identity. The human heart, as studies from the HeartMath Institute show, is a powerful transmitter of information. Its electromagnetic field is dozens of times more intense than that of the brain. And when it enters coherence, in other words, when it beats in harmony with emotions like gratitude, compassion, peace, it literally influences the field around it, including the field that organizes material opportunities. This means abundance does not need to be fought for. It needs to be tuned into, aligned, organized from within, like trees, which do not run after water but deepen their roots, which do not compare themselves to others but bloom in their own time, which do not compete, they connect. Nature thrives because it is in harmony with the whole, because it does not try to prove anything, because it does not doubt its own cycle. And this is a profound teaching. Prosperity is natural when there is coherence between what you feel, think, and do. When there is an alliance between your heart and your mind. When you stop trying to control life and start trusting the intelligence that organizes everything. But trust is not passivity. It is presence. It is acting with awareness, with lightness, with inner listening. It is making financial decisions from a state of vibrational alignment, not from emotional scarcity. It is recognizing that the universe is already working in your favor and that you don't need to push the river. Before any practical choice, investment, purchase, change, pause, feel, bring the heart into the conversation. Notice if there is tension, fear, contraction, or if there is peace, openness, an inner green light. This listening changes everything because it creates a field around you that attracts experiences compatible with your inner state. And the more you practice this coherence, the more the universe responds with synchronicity. The right opportunities appear, doors open with less effort. Decisions become clearer, not because life became easier, but because you stopped vibrating outside your own axis. True abundance is not a destination. It is a reflection, a side effect of a well-rooted vibrational identity. Just like the tree that blooms because it is deeply connected with its soil, you bloom when you stop searching outside for what can only be organized within. It's not uncommon to see someone manifest something they deeply desired, only to lose it soon after. A dream job, a promising relationship, an unexpected sum of money. And then the question arises, why didn't this last? But perhaps the more honest question is, was I able to sustain that internally? Because manifestation itself is not the challenge. The challenge is sustaining it. It's not just calling the rain. It's having the inner container prepared to receive it without breaking. It's being able to hold what you say you want, without your emotional structure collapsing in the process. Many ask for abundance, but vibrate in tension. They repeat affirmations, but carry guilt. They visualize expansion, but feel afraid of losing themselves. And it is this lack of congruence between desire and structure that creates cracks in the field. Because the nervous system, if still dysregulated, will interpret the arrival of financial peace as a threat, as something too unfamiliar, too uncomfortable. And so, it will seek, even unconsciously, to recreate the inner environment it knows. One where there is always something to fix, something to save, something to fear. The body, when accustomed to chaos, rejects silence, rejects too much calm, and turns abundance into a discomfort, something that doesn't fit, that disturbs, that feels too much. And often that's why what was achieved is lost, because there wasn't yet enough inner space to contain it. That's why raising your frequency is not just about wanting more. It's about expanding your vibrational capacity. It's about enlarging your inner cup. It's about strengthening your nervous system so it learns to recognize safety, even in the absence of struggle, even in the presence of peace. This process is subtle but powerful, and it begins with honest observation. How much tranquility can you really tolerate without sabotaging yourself? How much financial flow can you welcome without feeling that something bad will happen afterward? How much lightness can you stand before unconsciously creating new tension? Imagine a small cup trying to hold a flood. No matter how much it wants to, it overflows. Not out of incapacity, but out of lack of preparation. And that is exactly what happens with the energy of abundance. It arrives, but if your emotional container is still conditioned by scarcity, it escapes. It leaks through fears, through guilt, through old beliefs that say, "This is too much for me." That's why the real work is not asking for more. It's becoming more, becoming larger inside, more stable, more rooted, more open, more receptive. And this is a daily practice, a vibrational alignment built through small acts of presence, sincere gratitude, and self-compassion. Because abundance is like water. It flows where it finds space, where it finds structure, where there is a container that is whole, strong, and available. And often you don't need to call for more rain. You just need to care for your cup, repair the cracks, expand the edges, and learn, little by little, to feel safe within what once seemed too big. This is how frequency transforms, not by force, but by expansion. And from this new state, what arrives remains, because now, finally, it has a place to live. There is a silent, almost imperceptible image you emit all the time. It's not about what you show. It's not about what you say. It's about what you vibrate. This vibration, this energetic signature born from your emotional history, your deepest beliefs, your most repeated states, is what determines what the universe can or cannot sustain around you. Most people try to change reality from the outside, strategies, actions, new paths, but they don't realize that the external reality only responds to the frequency being maintained within. And that's why so often everything changes, only to return to how it was before, because the vibrational signature, the one that truly creates the surrounding field, was never recreated. Wealth, before it is an achievement, is stability. It is a field of presence, a vibration that doesn't waver every time something goes off track, a confidence that doesn't dissolve at the first sign of uncertainty, an energetic maturity that sustains abundance, even when circumstances still show nothing. Bruce Lipton reminds us that any belief can be rewritten, provided there is coherent repetition in a receptive state. It's not enough to repeat phrases. The body must accept, the heart must feel, the nervous system must recognize that new reality as something possible. And this doesn't happen through effort. It happens through sensitive practice, through small inner reconstructions that day by day create a new field. Neville Goddard deepens this same truth when he says, "You don't attract what you desire. You attract what you believe yourself to be." Desire without identity is noise. It is incoherence. It is the vibration of absence. But when you become on the inside what you want to live on the outside, the field aligns. Circumstances reorganize, the right people appear, and everything begins to move with less resistance. And perhaps this is the most profound decision of every spiritual journey, to stop trying to control the flow of life and begin to become a clear channel for it to pass through, not resisting, not forcing, simply cleansing the inner field, rebalancing what was in conflict, healing what still vibrates fear, and thus, little by little, allowing the universe to trust you as a container for the abundance it already is. Because abundance does not come from the outside as a gift. It blooms like a season you carry within, like a silent field that stabilizes around someone who has finally learned to sustain peace, gratitude, and presence, without hurry, without demand, without guilt. And perhaps this is the truest question you can ask yourself right now. If life doesn't change on the outside for a while, would you still be able to vibrate as if you already had everything within? If the answer is yes, even for brief moments, then you have already begun to create, already begun to sustain, already begun to bloom, because true wealth is always a state of being.